All right. So good morning, everybody. So we are reading from the Parsha of Noah this week in Torah. And so we know the Noah story, there's lots of iniquity and evil on the earth, and God is going to destroy everything and start all over. And he warns Noah to build an ark, and he's going to save Noah's family. Because Noah, at least in his generation, compared to everyone else, he has a certain level of goodness. So God's like, all right, you're the one, we'll save you, save all the animals, make sure you have, male and female of each of these animals, and we can save creation. And then there's a lot of midrash that goes with that about his wife, being environmentalist and saving all the plants and the herbs and, like a good witchy Jewish woman. And then, the sending out of the birds and figuring out when there's dry lands and the flood destroys the earth. Okay. At the end of that story, there's a couple of really strange things that get said by God, right? One thing is that God reminds Noah that to be fruitful and multiply again. God gives what are called the Noahide laws, like certain rules and laws for how humans have to interact with other humans and with animals. And in that, God says, even though you were created in the image of God, I now realize that from your very childhood, your inclination was to do evil. So I'm not going to hold you to a standard of goodness. It's a really bizarre, I don't like it. I read it and I'm like, nah, I don't know if I like that. But I want to share a teaching from Jonathan Sacks, from his book, Judaism's Life-Changing Ideas. And there's a good teaching in here about this. So first of all, Rabbi Sacks points out that in Bereshit, the Parsha that we read last week, and in Noah, there's a couple of themes that follow through. Both of the Parshas repeat one word 7 times. But Bereshit repeats the word tov, or goodness, 7 times. And Noah repeats the word covenant 7 times. And then we both have betzelem elohim appears in both parshas. But in Genesis, we get God created, God Elohim bara, right? God created ha'adam, the human beings, male and female. He created them in God's image. God created them in God's image. And in this parsha, we have whoever sheds the blood of a person, that person's blood shall be shed, for in the image of God, people were created. So we get that again, that we're created in the image of God, but with this, don't shed the blood of another human being. And what Rabbi Sacks has to say about that is he says, Genesis tells me that I am in the image of God. But Genesis 9 in Parsha Noah tells me that the other person is in the image of God. He says the first chapter tells us about the potential power of human beings, but the 9th chapter tells us about the moral limits of that power. We may not use our power to deprive another person of life. And this explains why the key word repeated 7 times changes from good to covenant. When we call something good, we're speaking of how it is within itself. But when we speak of covenant, we're talking about relationships and a moral bond between people. So he says, the great religious challenge is, can I see God's image in one who is not in my image, whose color, class, culture, or creed is different than mine, in the stranger, the foreigner, the outsider? So it becomes about that if we are in the image of God, we're not the only ones in the image of God. Every single thing in creation is in the image of God. And do we see that? And do we relate to all beings as if they are as much godly, divine creation as our own selves? So that's the teaching I wanted to dwell in for today. And I thought we would do a hit practice Number one, because we could always use hips and low back stuff, but also because metaphysically, yoga identifies hips and second chakra as the place of relationship. It's also, by the way, associated with the element of water because of the womb, and relationship is emotion, and water, emotion, the lunar influence is all, it's very feminine, but it's also associated with the flood. So it's kind of a good, it kind of works. Okay, so let's do this to start. Either sitting or lying down. We're just going to take a moment to drop in and become present. So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Take any little movements you need to just sort of settle. And just notice where your pelvis is in space. So notice what's touching the floor or whatever you're sitting on. Find your tailbone, your sits bones, the backs of your legs. And then from that place, just find your pelvic bowl. See if you can sit it upright so that if it were full with water, it's not sloshing over the edges of the bowl. So it takes some core engagement here to sit up tall that way. And once you find that strength and that upright spine, see if you can relax the shoulders though, away from the ears. Relax any tension in the throat, the neck, the face, as if the head is just very gently resting and floating, like bobbing and floating above the spine. And now turn your attention to your breath. Just allow the breath to come in and to go out, filling this shape of your body. Just sit with this question. In what ways am I betzelem elohim? What ways am I in the image, in the form, in the shape of what is godly? And beyond physical sameness, right, what are the characters and qualities of my being that are innate within me that are godly? And then for the next minute or two, I'm going to invite you to call into your mind different people, people you know, people you don't know, loved ones, acquaintances, images of people you've seen in the news from across the world, living in different countries, cultures, environments. And then you can move beyond human beings to animals, all created beings in nature, plants, things like that. But as you call up each image, you want to acknowledge this being is also created in the image of God, and see what shows up for you. What does that mean? Again, both physical and non-physical attributes. This being, like me, is created in the image of God. Might even challenge yourself to include beings that you maybe have an aversion to, right? Those creatures that scare you. These beings are created in the image of God. And let's maybe just offer a prayer based in metta, loving kindness meditation. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be healthy. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. And when you're ready, you can keep your eyes closed or you can open them. We're going to start moving. So you can take your feet together, knees out to the side. If you're very, very tight in your inner hips, don't worry. We're going to work on that. They'll be looser by the end of the practice. But you can start by bringing 2 blocks, and they can sit the out, like wedge them kind of underneath so that it helps you where you're already at. Right? So that you're not gripping and trying to hold yourself up here. So it just brings the floor closer to you. And then from here, we're just going to start with some circles. You can circle the other direction and just really being present in the physical body. This body is holy, not in the sense that it has a lot of holes, which it does. Openings and closings. Thank God for those too. There's a prayer for that, right? But holy in the sense of sacred. That everything within physical embodiment, physical manifestation is sacred in that it is somehow within and of itself in the image of what is divine. All right, from here, you're going to start tiptoeing your fingers forward and come to a place where you start to really feel an inner thigh stretch, and you can hang out there. You can stay up on fingertips. Just tuck your chin to your chest though, so you can relax the neck and the shoulders. You can bend those elbows so that they can, again, relax the shoulders away from the ears. And just breathe into the back body here so your lungs are very open, and really fill them on each inhale and letting all the breath go on an exhale. And then we're going to walk the hands over to one side. And you're going to immediately feel how this is opening the low back and the opposite hip. Now, the tendency here is to hike that shoulder up to the ear. Sharon, I can see you doing that. What you want to do is soften. So we kind of do this. But what I want you to do is soften that shoulder away from the ear. Bend that elbow. And almost like you can wrap that rib cage closer to the ground. So there's a little twist happening here too, right? So the ribs are reaching towards the ground and you're dropping down. You can again tuck the chin to chest and breathe into that lung, which is now really expanded. The side body, breathe into the hip. So when we open the side waist, when we open the hips, what we're really doing is expanding that part of ourself that meets the other, right? That part of ourself that feels like our edge where we end and the other begins. that sense of separation we have. When we can expand that, we're actually expanding our sense of connection. Good, you're gonna come back through the center and let's go all the way over to the other side. And again, just notice when you get there, there's tightness and it doesn't feel so open and it's okay. That hip bone might wanna rise up off the ground, the sit bone, don't let it. Keep that grounding down, that's your anchor. And you may start with that shoulder very high up and then you wanna remind yourself, a little bit of twist in the belly, pull the belly in, wrap the ribs, drop the shoulder and the chin. And then come into the breath. And you can rock a little bit, side to side, forward and back. Right? We don't have to stagnate in the pose. The essence of water is flow. Right? Stagnant water is not healthy water. Right? That's where you get all kinds of algal blooms and everything. You want to create a little bit of flow in this area of your body. So moving in and out, side to side, it gives you different kind of information. Good. All right, walk yourself back through the center and come on up. Woo, let's bring the feet to the knees together, hips together, and let's just take a little hip hike here. So you can take your hands behind you, plant them to the floor, spread the fingers, really ground down across all fingertips, including the pinky, and then just press yourself up for a moment. Yeah, so strengthening the arms. Think about the shoulder blades pulling together on the back body to open the chest. The chin can tuck down and look forward. If your neck is healthy and no cervical issues, you might want to lean the head back and open the throat. And then slowly lower the hips down to the ground. Okay, let's take one leg. Just take your right foot up off the ground. Bring that right foot forward. You can keep your hands to support you here for a moment. You're just going to take some circles through the ankle. I don't know if you could hear my ankle clicking. If you've ever sprained an ankle severely, sometimes it'll always click. It's like, ah. Okay, point and flex a few times. Good. And now see if you can extend wherever you can. It's early. We haven't done a down dog. We have not stretched really the calves or the hamstrings yet, but see where you can. And then just take your hands to that foot. Yeah. And then maybe you can bend the elbows in and bring that leg a little closer. Sit up as tall as you can. Don't round through the back. Don't collapse into the low back. Lift yourself up out of the sit bones. Pull the belly in. Lengthen through the waist. Yeah. It's like a version of what's called crane pose. Yeah. Okay, good. You're going to bend that knee. Cross it over the left knee. So the right ankle is crossed over the left knee. This is a little bit of a sitting pigeon. And just kind of go back and forth a few times. See how that feels. Again, just opening inner hips, outer hips, glutes, low back stuff. Good. And then one more time, we're going to press into the hands. Press strongly down into that left foot and just lift yourself up. And you might want to just feel what's going on there in the hip. Good. And lower it back down. Good. Extend the left leg. And if you have your blocks nearby, you might want blocks to either side of that front leg. Otherwise, just your fingertips. You're going to just fold yourself where you can go. Wherever you can go, we're just starting to stretch the back of that left leg now. But this, you're really going to also feel this into the low back. Like really lengthening and creating some space out of the back of the hip and sacrum joint. So if you have your blocks, again, that just, maybe you rest your forearm to the blocks, that becomes more restorative. So in this moment, just being with your body, going through these different postures and sensations, In what way is that somehow in the image of the divine? What about your experience? What about what you're noticing, sensing, integrating? All right, come back up out of the forward fold. Let's bend both knees again. Good. We're going to take the left foot up. Yeah, and we're going to do the same thing. So we're circling, and then we're going to point and flex. Take your time to just open up the foot and ankle. Good. And then you're going to sit yourself up nice and tall. No like collapsing here. Sit up tall. This is core. And you're going to find some connection to your calf or shin or ankle. And you're going to try to straighten through that leg and try to bring the elbows in a little closer. Remember to breathe. Yeah. Good. And then from here, we cross that left ankle now over the top of the right thigh. And this may be, this is a lot maybe for you, right? I mean, there are a lot of variations of pigeon. We tend to do it on our back, sometimes forward facing, but this is a seated version of pigeon. And you'll feel this mostly in your, right now, in your left glute, right? Do you guys feel that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So interesting that the glutes are like the strongest, meatiest muscles in the body. And what are they doing? They're like protecting us around our hips, around that vulnerability, right? Like that place of like where we connect to others. And this is like, oh, wait, can I create a little bit more openness, vulnerability, like letting go of some of that guardedness around how I relate to the other. Maybe the other isn't something to fear. Maybe the other is something to love and see as godlike and be inspired by and be, awakened through. All right, hands to the floor. You're going to lift yourself up. Try not to lock out the elbows. Try to keep the chest open, shoulders back. And again, just feeling what needs to do some work, what needs to do less work. Good. And lower back down. Okay, last thing we're doing seated before we get up and move. A little bit of a boat pose because there is an arc that figures prominently in today's Parsha. So you're going to lift both feet off the ground if you can. You can keep your hands by your legs if you need, or you can offer them up, palms facing to the sky. Again, the tendency is to collapse and to round the back. We're trying to do the opposite. Peel the shoulders back and down, squeeze the shoulder blades together, belly is nice and strong. You'll feel a little bit of a pelvic floor, like a containment. And now if you want to play a little bit with core, you can extend back, but you're not touching the shoulders down or the legs. Really strong here, and you can bring it back up. You can play with that a few times, extend it and bring it up. This is definitely a core exercise. A modification for that would be to keep the hands behind you on the floor, and you can use your hands as an extra support to go in and out. Yeah, that definitely makes it easier. It takes some of the weight off, and it supports the low back more if your low back is a little tweaky and not. But this will help build strength in the core that ultimately protects the low back, right? Okay. When you've had enough of that helps heat up your body a little bit. That's good. You're going to come on over into a downward facing dog. First down dog in the morning. Take your time, get there how you like. You can set up your hands. Make sure your hands are nice and spread and contacting the mat as your base. You can come into a child's pose first if you want, or do some cat-cows first. But ultimately, you are going to tuck the toes and make your way into a downward facing dog. And then once you're in your down dog, you can, again, just play, pedal through the heels, shift one hip or knee to the side and then the other. Just notice what wants some more opening. See if you can, again, soften the shoulders out of the ears. So if you feel like you're really pushing so hard that your inner elbows are locked out and your shoulders are up in your ears, you want to soften the elbows and you want to relax the chin and draw the shoulder blades down and back on the back of the body. Good. Good. From here, take your right leg all the way up to the sky as high as you can go. We're just coming into a little down dog twist or stretch. You're going to shift the camera so you guys. You're going to bend that right knee and you're going to open the right hip so that the foot drops towards the left side of you. So from your down dog split, oh, that didn't help either. Hold on. There you go. You're just doing this. So the leg comes up behind you, bend the knee and drop the heel behind you. And keep pressing evenly into both hands, but look underneath your right armpit, look towards the ceiling. And you're just getting a big inner thigh stretch on that standing left leg. Right? Good. Now we're going to take some deep circles through the hip joint. So the knee drops down to meet the other, then opens back out, and you're just circling. If this is too much for you on your hands, you can also do this from your hands and knees. You can come down to the ground for this part, right? If it's too much, we're just really opening, flushing out that hip joint. Good. And then extend the leg back behind you. Again, if you're down on your knees, you can do that from right here on the hands and knees. And we're going to do a little bit of core here. So you're just going to pull your knee in towards your chin or your nose. Squeeze, hug it in, hug it in, hug it in. Extend it back out behind you. You're going to bring that knee in towards the outer elbow or tricep. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. A little bit of core. And bring it back out. And then last one, you're going to bring the knee forward, but then swipe it towards your left elbow. And you'll feel this in the oblique abs. And again, squeeze. You might be shaking. I'm shaking. Bring that leg back behind you. Lower the knees to the ground. Untuck the toes. And sit back for a child's pose. You guys all still with me now? That was a lot from Monday morning. Okay, we need to get things heated up. So in your child's pose, you're just gonna relax and just take a breather before we do the next side. If that was a lot for your wrist, you can take some wrist circles here right now, just like slowly opening and stretching out the wrists. And breathe into the back body from this pose and feel the expansion. Like how does where you end and everything else that we think is somehow separate than us outside of our physical understanding of our own self. How do you make contact and touch that is bigger than you? It's a funny question, but like imagine your breath almost like a kiss, right? Like every time you inhale and your back body expands, it's like you're kissing all of the rest of everything that exists outside of your own, isolated sense of self. It's ultimately about connection, right? We're not separate. Separation is like an illusion, And I think that's what the Parsha is reminding us. It's like the sin of the people was that everybody was living this egoic, separate self life without consideration for that we're all connected, right? The world would be very, very different if we behaved as if everything in the world was part of us and we are part of it, and all of it is part of God. Tuck the toes. You're going to come up to your down dog. We're doing the second side, so your left leg is going to lift up high for a down dog split. Just feel that inversion first. Reground your hands, look up, make sure your hands are solid. And then you'll bend that left knee, drop the heel behind the right hip. And you're just opening up the inner thigh. Again, try to let the head relax, try to let the shoulders relax by keeping a little bend in the elbows. Always good to use muscle strength, not the joint. Good. And then we're going to take those deep hip circles, dropping the knee down towards the inner knee and then up and around. And taking any variation, if again, you need to come down to the floor. All right, that little bit of core, extend the left leg behind you. And then you're gonna bring the knee all the way in as far up towards your forehead as you can reach. The belly is pulling in and up. Hold that. And then bring it back behind you. We're taking the knee now forward towards the outer left tricep or elbow. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Pull that belly in. And reach it back. And then last one, the knee comes forward and you swipe it over towards the outer right elbow. Lift up as high as you can from the ground. And bring it back behind you. And then you're just going to walk both feet up towards your hands. Hang out there for a second in your forward fold and just bounce a little bit of shaking out. Good. Bend the knees and let yourself roll up to stand. Okay. You guys have blocks nearby? We're going to do some lunges that we're going to take down into lizard poses to do some really deep hip stretching. So keep your blocks nearby if you have them. Okay. Let's start with a little bit of balance. So you're gonna find both feet on the floor, take a look, spread your toes, make sure you have arches lifted, so there's a pulling upward and engaging. And then you can take your hands to your hips, and you're just gonna shift all your weight into your, well, I'm gonna mirror you now. I don't know if I'm mirroring or not on the video, but I'm mirroring who I'm looking at. So I'm gonna stand on my left and I'm gonna lift up my right, okay? Yeah, so you're gonna lift your right. Don't worry what I'm doing. You did. You lift your right knee up. That's what I'm trying to have you guys do. Lift your right knee up. There you go. Open the hip out to the side. You give a little balance here. Yeah, take your other hand out as a counterbalance. And we're just kind of playing with where the hips are at. Good. We could turn that into a tree. You can bring the heel of the foot to the upper thigh or to the lower, but just not against the knee itself. And then press the foot into the inner thigh. You can bring your hands to your heart. Stand up nice and tall. Tailbone is lengthening down. Core is pulling in. Shoulders are down from the ears. If you want to open your arms up to the sky, you can do that. Like, you know, beautiful branches. Oh my gosh, the trees are so gorgeous out right now. So you can be the most beautiful. How are the colors, the shape? I mean, that's an interesting thing, right? There's a great book years ago called God is a Verb. And what if it's not like nouns that we identify with as being in the image of God? It's not nouns, it's actually verbs. It's the doings and the beings. What if in the image of God is the trees changing color and our own ability to shift and change and adapt and go with what is at the right moment and the right time. So if you're being frustrated in this pose and I'm holding you here for a long time, how is that in the image of God? That we can notice our frustrations and our failings and our imperfections and still be in the flow of it, right? Okay, let that go, let that go. We're gonna take that right leg. You're gonna reach it straight back behind you. Toes are pressed into the mat, heel is up. Both hips are facing forward. You're going to bend deeply into the left knee. So give yourself enough distance and space that your left knee can bend deeply. It's not coming past your front toes. So that front knee is bent, but it's stacked over the ankle or slightly behind the ankle. Okay, good. And then from here, you should feel a pretty big stretch in that back hip, right? You guys feeling that? Yeah. What we're going to do now, you keep your hands on your hips. You're just going to bend the back knee now, like a split lunge. Aha. Now you're going to feel this going into the quad muscles, big hips. And now you're going to just lean back a little bit. Lean back with your upper body, like you're leaning back in a lazy boy chair. So we're just opening the front of the hip. Good, good, good. Now you're going to just come vertical again. Straighten that back leg again. Deepen into the front knee bend. All right. You're going to bring your right hand down to the block and open the left arm up to the sky. We're taking a twist. Yeah. Notice if, as you're in this pose longer, you have more access to make more space for yourself. Maybe you slide your back foot back a little bit more to go even deeper, right? Because now you're opening, it's okay. All right, and let's just take a little shoulder opener. If it's healthy for your shoulder and your rotator cuff to do that, you can like backstroke your arm a few times. Just opening and flushing out shoulder joint. Good. All right, now here's where this gets fun. You're gonna find your second block. Take it to the inside of that left knee. And you're gonna slowly lower the right knee down to the ground. Untuck the right toes. And depending what you need based on your flexibility, we're coming into what's called lizard lunge. You can heel toe that left foot a little wider. Yeah. Okay, and you can turn the toes slightly out. And you're going to bring yourself down either onto hands, if that's the farthest you could go, if that hip is like, oh, you can't go any deeper. If you can go deeper, you walk the blocks forward a little. You can bring yourself down onto forearms. If you're really open and flexible here, maybe you bring your forearms directly onto the ground. And we're just doing, obviously, the very big inner thigh, hip flexor, adductor stretch. Now, you do not need to get stuck and grip and hold your breath. You can shimmy side to side. If you look up, you can see that that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like feeling what the, different ranges of motion here, okay? I mean, the breath itself is an interaction with the rest of life. Right? We're literally inhaling, bringing into ourselves this communally shared air and oxygen, which, okay, we've all had some trauma about that in the last couple of years with COVID. So, but there's this sense that we are in communion with everything else that lives. We're not really separate ever, right? Okay, from here, you could come up a little higher. You're going to now turn the toes. Now you're going to turn the toes out even wider. You can take your left hand to that left thigh, and you're going to sort of like push away from you gently. And there's a little twist happening. So you can drop the right sideways, and you're just twisting, and maybe looking over that right shoulder. Again, you can do this low from the forearm as well. And again, you can shimmy in here, and you might notice, oh, this is really getting into that outer hip, right? Yeah, and you can always like massage. Feel free to touch your own body however you need. I mean, like I'm very aware right now that, oh, wow, this is really tight, and it wants the heel of my hand to kind of like massage into that. Yeah. All right, last thing we're gonna do here, heel toe the foot back in. You're now going to shift both hips back. You're on that knee. If that's not good for you, you can bring it up. So you could have two options. You could do it from the knee and take the forward fold over this leg here, or you can step into both feet and do it as what's called a triangle forward bend or pyramid pose from standing. Your choice. Either way, we're really going, again, into the stretch of the hamstrings, but also those outer hips. So wherever you are, make sure one hip isn't dropping under the other. You want to pull both hips back evenly and then kind of fold yourself over that front thigh. If you're standing, push down firmly into that left big toe. And if you're sitting, push out through that left big toe. And you're going to feel that opening up all the way to that outer left hip. Great. Okay, for those of you who have the knee down, you're now going to put step into that back foot, lift the knee, and everybody's going to step forward with the right leg and hang out at the front of the mat in a forward fold. Shift yourself out side to side. Shake it out. And come on up to stand. And we'll do the other side. How are you guys feeling? Is this all right? We're getting into a lot of opening. Here, take a little, see what's going on here. Let's do a little circling through the hips here. See if it's feeling nice. All right, coming into a little bit more spaciousness. Whee! All right, and we'll get ready for the second side. So this time you're going to be standing firmly on the right leg, and you're going to lift the left foot up off the ground. And again, tailbone reaches down, belly pulls in. You're just finding your stability. If you need to find a wall, find a wall. If you need to bring your arms out for counterbalance, that's fine. Good. From here, we're going to open the knee and the foot out to the side. So we're opening the inner thigh. Good. And then from there, we can find some version of tree. And you may notice that this side is easier than the first side. This side is harder than the first side, right? Which of your muscles are you more attuned and accustomed to engaging for balance? And that gives you really good information, right? Maybe we're betzelem elohim in our ability to think through and observe and draw in information and then use that information to learn and to grow and to shift, right? Just our consciousness. Bye. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so find your balance on this side and just notice in this moment, I choose to be in the image of God in terms of my sense of serenity or patience, or I choose to be divine by allowing this process of allowing, right? Or by being creative in the pose. That's in the image of God because I'm being creative and I can create what this experience looks like, feels like for me, and interact with my own experience creatively in the moment. So there's so many ways and things that can mean. Good. All right, from here, we're going to come back into the lunge. And just set yourself up for the lunge, right? Straight leg in the back, both hips pointing forward, that front knee bending deeply, giving yourself as much distance between the legs as you need. Good. And then you're going to bend the back knee. Oh, definitely feeling that. Good. And then you can lean back a little bit. Yeah. Belly's still pulling in and the chest is lifted. Good. Breathe. Re-straighten through the back leg. Come deep into that lunge. Bring the arms up overhead for just another breath or two. And then you're going to take left hand down to the left block. Bend that right knee a little deeper. Maybe you need to create more space between the feet. And open up to the twist. And you can do those rotations through the arm and shoulder. You're going to find your other block. Lower the left knee down to the ground. Untuck the toes. Yeah. And you're coming into wherever you are. And So where you begin in the pose isn't necessarily where you have to stay the whole time in the pose, right? Start where you start, see what you need on this side, and then you can play. So you can, again, open that foot a little wider. That just gives more space for those hips to descend, right? And you may start up kind of high on this side, or you may go lower. Yeah. Do you want me to show you from the side, Karen, what this looks like? So you're on mute, I don't hear you, but I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm lowering that knee and that foot. So I'm getting a big hip flexor stretch here. This foot is still forward. I'm getting a big stretch here. I'm opening the knee just a tiny bit to the side, and then I'm coming in deep. Yep. And then I'm just kind of opening in and out. Then from here, you can heel, toe, and really turn those toes out to the side more. And you can maybe just add a little press away from that thigh, right? So you're taking a little extra added twist in the pose. Ah. Okay, and then you're hinging it back. So you're balancing on that back knee, the front foot is flexed. Yep. Folding in. You're thinking about kind of like layering yourself over, not just rounding the head towards the knee. You want the head to reach like past the toes. You want the belly to lift and lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. The more you lift and lengthen the belly, the more you're going to feel that you're opening through that hamstring and the outer hip. That outer hip pulls back, the big toe pushes forward. And if you want to take the version where you're off the knees completely, just stand up with both feet. And the same thing, you're lengthening the belly, floating down over the thigh, and pulling that right hip crease up and back. All right, from here, everybody's going to come up onto the feet. And we're going to turn this into a standing fan pose. So you can take your blocks if you need them, you might not need them. You're going to basically turn all 10 toes. You're going to be on this way on your mat. Face all 10 toes in one direction. You're nice and wide. And you're going to fold hands to the floor or fingertips to the floor here and just let your head hang over. Yep, so now we're doing more of an inner thigh opener. Notice where your body is in space. If you're very far forward into your toes, or if you're very far back, like into your heels with your tush reaching behind you, and see if you can just close your eyes and see if you can kind of balance your hips over that midpoint of your feet. So you feel like you're right in the middle of your feet. What would it feel like to come into that sense of balance between yourself and all of the rest of Ma'aseh Bereshit, all of that, whatever is in creation, to feel fully in balance with that. From here, you can bend the knees slightly and just kind of heel toe your feet back together so that they're underneath you. And you can hold opposite elbows here. And then bend the knees and come up to stand. Okay. Let's bring the practice down onto the mat. So why don't we come back down onto the mat? We have to do a rainbow because, you know, it is the ultimate symbol and sign of the covenant. So let's come onto the belly for a moment. You're gonna come onto the belly, and we're gonna start with a half bow. So a half bow, you're just gonna bend your right knee, reach back for your right ankle. You can take the left hand forward on the floor. Just take the stretch first. You'll feel that as a quad stretch. And then you're gonna flex that foot. So reach the toes down and the heel up. And you're gonna lift the thigh up off the ground wherever it's able to go. It might not go far. You're not yanking or pulling. You're being very gentle with your body. But you're starting to really contract the glutes and the hamstring. You're stretching the quads now. And then maybe you reach the front arm up off the ground as well. You want your belly to be drawing in nice and strong here. And if you want, maybe you can also lift the back leg up off the ground nice and straight, toes reaching straight back behind you. Good. And then lower everything down. Make a pillow for your head. Bend both knees and shift them side to side. Good. Extend your right leg long now. Keep the left leg bent. And same thing, second side. Find contact with the ankle. Feel the front of your pelvic bone grounds it down onto the floor, but feel the belly button lifting as if it's pulling into the low back, into the back of the spine. And then you can flex that foot and lift the thigh up off the ground. And then maybe the arm lifts and the leg can follow. So different stages based on what you're up to. And lower it down, shake it out. Okay, if you would like to go for a full bow pose, I'm going to give you a couple options. So the full bow pose would be taking hold of both ankles, flexing both feet, shoulders are reaching up and back, squeezing the shoulder blades together. And again, you're just lifting wherever you can. You don't have to lift far. You can even keep the thighs on the ground, but you're just reaching the heels back away from you. Belly is pulling in. There's a strong Kegel effect. That's your bow. Another option, if you want to do this in a little bit more gentle way for your back, is to come onto the ground and you could just take a bridge. So a bridge is like a bow. You can also take a full wheel pose if you want, if you have the strength to do that and you're open. We didn't do that much shoulder opening today, but we did do a lot of hip opening. So you can push into the feet and lift the hips up and get that bow essence here. If you're taking the wheel, your hands would come to the floor behind you and you push the floor away and lift up the whole body. Okay, come on over onto your back. And let's just hug one leg in at a time. Hug your right knee in. And then switch and hug your left knee in. And then bring both knees in and let yourself rock side to side. And let's take a little twist here before Shavasana so your arms can come out to the sides. Let both knees drop over towards the left elbow. And you'll feel that, again, this is going into that low back, glute, outer hip. And just breathe into the right lung. And I'm going to read you a poem while you're breathing here. So this is a poem by Hafiz, who's a Persian Sufi poet. And it's translated by Daniel Ladinsky in the book Love Poems from God. If God invited you to a party, if God invited you to a party and said, everyone in the ballroom tonight will be my special guest, how would you then treat them when you arrived? Indeed, And Hafiz knows that there is no one in this world who is not standing upon God's jeweled dance floor. You're going to shift your knees over to the other side, both knees heading towards your right elbow. Stay there in the twist and breathe for a moment. And whenever you're ready, you can come into your Shavasana, just extending your legs out in front of you. Adjust yourself however you need to get comfortable. And let the weight of your whole body just sink down into the ground. The earth itself is this amazing creation that we can never even fathom, and it holds us. So we're in constant relationship to the earth. Can you allow yourself now to feel that relationship you have with the earth itself as you lie here? Taking a moment to offer any blessings you have for yourself, for others in your life, or for the world. Coming back into your breath. And then stretching through your fingers and your toes. And let yourself roll to one side. And take as much time as you would like there. I'll just offer a final blessing. May we each know our own innate goodness, our innate essence as being in the image of something very, very divine and sacred that is also the substance and essence of everything else in creation. And may we treat ourselves and all beings in this world with great dignity and respect. Namaste.